What if I told you that some of your most common daily habits, things you do without a second thought, might actually be subtle indicators of lower intelligence? We often associate intelligence with grand gestures, solving complex equations, or composing symphonies. But what if it's the small unconscious patterns that reveal the most about our cognitive abilities? In our daily lives, we all develop routines and habits. They're mental shortcuts that help us navigate the world efficiently. But sometimes these shortcuts can lead us down a path of cognitive laziness, preventing us from engaging with the world in a deeper, more meaningful way. Today, we're going to explore some of these seemingly harmless habits that, according to scientific research and psychological observation, might be holding us back intellectually. This isn't about judgment, but about self-awareness and the opportunity for growth. Let's start with a very common one: constantly checking your phone for notifications, even when you're not expecting anything important. This might seem like a simple modern-day tic, but it points to something deeper. In a 2017 study published in the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research, researchers found that the mere presence of a smartphone can reduce available cognitive capacity. They called this phenomenon brain drain. Participants who had their phones on the desk, even face down and on silent, performed worse on cognitive tasks than those who left their phones in another room. The unconscious effort your brain uses to not check your phone consumes mental resources that could be used for the task at hand. This habit signals an inability to regulate attention and a dependency on external stimuli for validation or engagement. True intelligence isn't just about processing information. It's about directing your focus where it matters most. When we're constantly pulled away by digital alerts, we're fragmenting our attention and weakening our ability for deep, concentrated thought, a cornerstone of high-level cognition. Next, consider the habit of rigidly sticking to your opinions, even when presented with compelling evidence to the contrary. We often see this in online debates, but it happens in everyday conversations too. This isn't a sign of strong conviction. It's often a sign of low cognitive flexibility. The Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias first described by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999, provides a powerful explanation. They found that individuals with low competence in a particular area tend to overestimate their ability. They lack the self-awareness to recognize their own knowledge gaps. An intelligent mind is a curious one, open to the possibility of being wrong. It understands that knowledge is not a static destination but a continuous journey. As the philosopher Karl Popper argued, true scientific and intellectual progress comes from the falsification of ideas, from actively trying to prove ourselves wrong. A person who dismisses new information without consideration isn't protecting their worldview. They're trapping themselves within it, stunting their intellectual growth. The habit is to defend, whereas the intelligent action is to inquire. Here's another subtle habit: an over-reliance on simple black and white thinking. Do you find yourself categorizing things, people or ideas as either good or bad, or right or wrong, with no room for nuance? This is known as dichotomous thinking. While it can be a useful mental shortcut for making quick decisions, it's a poor tool for understanding a complex world. A 2009 study on political psychology showed that individuals with a lower tolerance for ambiguity are more drawn to simplistic, rigid ideologies. Intelligence, in many ways, is the ability to hold multiple, often conflicting ideas in your mind at once and still function. It's the capacity to appreciate the shades of gray. Think of it like this. A child might see a story as having a clear hero and a clear villain. An adult, however, understands that characters have complex motivations, flaws, and virtues. When we insist on a black and white world, we are essentially reverting to a less developed mode of thinking, one that shies away from the rich complexity that defines reality. It's easier, yes, but it's intellectually limiting. Let's move on to how we communicate. A habit that often flies under the radar is the overuse of vague language and cliches. Phrases like, think outside the box, at the end of the day, or it is what it is. When used sparingly, they're harmless. But when they form the backbone of your communication, it can signal a lack of original thought. In his famous 1946 essay, Politics and the English Language, George Orwell argued that lazy language leads to lazy thinking. When we rely on pre-packaged phrases, we stop thinking about what we actually mean. We're borrowing someone else's thoughts instead of formulating our own. An intelligent mind strives for precision. It searches for the right words to convey a specific, nuanced idea. Compare. We need to leverage our synergies to achieve a paradigm shift. We need our marketing and sales teams to work together so we can find a new way to sell this product. The second is clear, direct, and demonstrates a real grasp of the situation. The first is just a collection of buzzwords that sound important, but means very little. Clear language is a direct reflection of clear thought. Finally, consider the habit of passively consuming information without ever questioning or engaging with it. This is the difference between watching a documentary and just letting it wash over you, versus watching it and pausing to look up a concept, debate a point with a friend, or reflect on how it changes your perspective. True learning isn't a passive act of reception. It's an active process of engagement. The educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom developed a framework known as Bloom's taxonomy in the 1950s, which organizes learning into different levels. The lowest level is simply remembering facts. The highest levels are evaluating and creating. An intelligent person doesn't just collect information, they interact with it. They ask questions. Is this source credible? What are the underlying assumptions? How does this connect to what I already know? In an age of infinite content, it's easy to fall into the trap of endless scrolling and passive consumption. But this is the intellectual equivalent of junk food. It fills you up without providing any real nourishment. The truly intelligent habit is to be a discerning and active participant in your own learning, not just a bystander. So, as we've seen, intelligence isn't just about what you know, but how you think. It's reflected in our ability to manage our attention, embrace complexity, remain open to new ideas, communicate with precision, and actively engage with the world. Recognizing these habits in ourselves can be uncomfortable, but it's also incredibly empowering. It shows us where we have the opportunity to grow, to sharpen our minds, and to engage with our lives more fully. It's not about labeling anyone as unintelligent. It's about a commitment to intellectual vitality. So I'll leave you with a question to reflect on. Which of your daily habits might be limiting your thinking? And what's one small change you could make this week to challenge it? Thank you for watching. If this video gave you something to think about, please consider liking it and subscribing for more content that explores the fascinating landscape of the human mind. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them.